This is an example of a close reading of a poem, and the poem here is Mockingbird. You can see the performance of the video by Reeves at the link in the marginal note. The reading is 10 pages in length. It goes through the poem 3 separate times. This is a sample of how you might read a poem in 3 separate steps. The first reading is for literal meaning, looking up vocabulary and any background knowledge. And I've put all of those in marginal notes, things that I thought you might need to know to understand the poem. The second reading, you might read for poetic devices such as symbolism, imagery, simile, or metaphor. And that's sort of the big picture poetic styles that help you really understand the poem in a deeper way. And again, I've put marginal notes that explain some of those. The third reading are for poetic devices affecting sound, rhythm, and tone, the line-by-line effects of style within the poem, which in this poem, which is very sound-based, there's quite a lot of. So the first reading, I've used aqua highlighting so you can see the colors of passages that I think you might have to look up. And the first thing you would want to look up for Mockingbird is information on a mockingbird. So the marginal note has a link to the northern mockingbird and information on its songs and its life, which helps you understand why the mockingbird is the central image used in this poem and why they're badass. The next thing I've marked, you may know it, you may not, is a Molotov cocktail, a Mockingbird Molotov cocktail. So from Wikipedia, I've given information on what a Molotov cocktail is. Johnny Appleseed, you may or may not know this. It's often like a children's story. It's a folk tale. Johnny Appleseed is a historical folk figure. I didn't know what a drop-top Cadillac is with a big back seat. Some of you may, but I had to look that up, so I included a marginal note on that as well. It's also watering hole, which is a slang term. I don't even know if it's used very commonly anymore. It's a bar, by the way. Songs, which you may or may not know. It's raining, it's pouring. I've linked to people singing it so you can hear what it sounds like because it's relevant to the sound of this poem. Also, he includes some other languages here: Hawaiian, Japanese, Hebrew, and Arabic. So I've annotated that as well. He includes another song, Hush Little Baby, Don't Say a Word. The word cacophony isn't one that you hear very often, so I've annotated that from a dictionary in the margin. That's the first reading, which is just for the literal basic sense, where you might mark words you don't know and try to figure out just what the basic meaning of the poem is. This is the second reading, and here I've looked at big picture poetic styles. I've also got here in the margin a link to the Cambridge Glossary of Literary Devices and Terms, and that's where you can look up a lot of the different literary devices the poets might use that you want to be familiar with when you're reading poetry. The green highlighting indicates symbolism, imagery, simile, and metaphor. The first one is the green MCs of the animal kingdom. Mockingbirds are obviously not masters of ceremonies at performances, although this poem poses the idea that they can function that way because they listen, mimic, and remix what they like. They rock the mic. Next, I can hear them sing the sounds of car alarms like they were songs of spring. And the metaphor here is car alarms are the songs of spring. It takes the sound of the car alarm and it makes it into that sound you hear when you open the windows when it starts getting warmer, which sadly is true, especially in New York. The next in the green highlighted, as I drive through a neighborhood, say, where people got a lotta, I'll take a mockingbird I caught in a neighborhood, where folks ain't got nada just to let it go, you know. This is both literal because literally he's imagining that he's collected all of these mockingbirds and had the mockingbirds fly around neighborhoods and hear everything that people say so that they can imitate them. And then he's collected them all up and dropped them in different neighborhoods so they'll sing the songs of one neighborhood in another. So, for example, the Upper West Side can hear the songs of the South Bronx, and the South Bronx can hear the sounds of Times Square. So the mockingbirds become sort of like little recorders that capture neighborhood sounds and can be transported to other neighborhoods to exchange information and experiences. So on the one hand, that's literal, the idea of taking these mockingbirds and trapping them and transferring them to different neighborhoods, but obviously also it's very symbolic. It's symbolism insofar as it's the idea of neighborhoods experiencing what it might be like to live in or listen to another neighborhood. It's imagery because it's highly visual. You can picture the mockingbirds in the paper bags from Walmart in the back seat of the drop-top Cadillac, all singing their songs. And it's symbolism, it's imagery, and it's also metaphor. The mockingbird becomes a metaphor for sharing or getting to know someone else's experiences or everyday life. There's the brown paper Walmart bags full of loaded mockingbirds, and the loaded mockingbirds is definitely metaphoric because obviously a mockingbird can't literally be loaded like a gun. But in this case, he's imagining that the collection of sounds they've picked up in the neighborhood are weaponry that the mockingbirds collect and are loaded with, like a gun is loaded with bullets. I'll get everybody. The asshole at the watering hole is actually he's sort of imagining a stereotype of a up-and-coming wealthy young guy who's the asshole at the watering hole asking what brand the ice at the bar is, as if ice comes in brands and he's willing to pay more for his ice as long as he can get the fancy new name brand of ice. And I really hope that corporations don't come up with the idea of selling name brand ice to charge us more money for our ice as they have done for water. He also here, I'll get everyone's good mornings. Aloha, konnichiwa, shalom, assalamu alaikum. And there, the good mornings are literally, he's going to capture the sounds of the good mornings, but also it's the idea of a morning in that neighborhood, or what a good morning might look like, or what it might sound like as they pass each other on the street. And through use of these mockingbirds, everybody gets heard, and he now imagines both the symbol, an image, and a metaphor in the honest mockingbird that is a witness for every person. So it's the scenario of a courtroom where the one true witness, your mockingbird, will tell the court, the judge, the jury, the audience exactly what your life and experiences were like and stand up for you in the court of law to properly represent you. So it's the one honest mockingbird. And towards the end of the poem, he imagines that having brought the sounds of neighborhoods to everybody all over the world, they'll offer me a key to the city, a gold-plated, oversized key to the city. And that's, again, notice it's layered with symbolism, imagery, and metaphor. It's literally a key to the city that he'll get as a reward. But the key to the city is a symbol. When you give someone a quote-unquote key to the city, there's no actual door that it unlocks. It symbolizes that you're welcome in that city. It's also heavily imagistic because you can picture that big gold key. There's also quite a lot of irony here in this passage because the fact that he's used terms like Molotov cocktail and loaded mockingbirds to describe what he's doing makes clear that he doesn't really think he's going to be praised and rewarded for making the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side hear all the car alarms that you would hear if you lived in the barrio. He knows that in fact that might not be welcomed by people in the wealthier neighborhoods. So he wants you to think about they should praise him, but they probably won't. And the last line, as we've discussed, the first and the last lines are really important here. Mockingbirds are badass, and which is his idea of mockingbirds and all that they can do to bring people together and make them understand one another. And the closing, I'll listen for what's missing and I'll put it there. Makes clear that what the poet is imagining doing is filling in those blank spaces, those spaces where people don't understand, can't understand, or can't imagine the experiences of people who are different from themselves, and he'll fill those in using the mockingbirds. On our third reading, for sound, rhythm, and tone, so important to this poem, and you'll notice it right away, but the closer you look at this poem, the more you can see all of the sounds and the rhythms that he's using. And I've highlighted here in purple, so you can see that he uses end stop rhymes like, Mike, talk it, squawk it. So he's got rhyme at the end of some lines. It's not a regular, but it's quite prevalent throughout the whole poem. So Mike, talk it, squawk it, check it are all end rhymes. But he also has internal rhyme like mock, rock. Those are within the lines rhymes that give the cadence to the poem, especially because he uses heavy consonants like mock, mimic, mix, like, rock, mock gives it a hard sound, and also kind of explosive, which fits with the Molotov cocktail and the loaded mockingbirds that he's releasing out into neighborhoods. Talk it, squawk it, check it also gives a sort of slang feel to it as well as rhythm. And the tone, actually the tone here is kind of slangy, but also it's humorous. It's got a bounciness to it, which is even more emphasized by including songs in here, like Hush Little Baby, Don't You Cry.